everyone. Hello and welcome to tonight's broadcast to the full moon in Aries releasing practice. I'm Phaedra. I'm the artist and astrologer of Mystic Physick Astrology, and most of you here in the group already know who I am. So I know there's some of you who've just joined who might be joining us live for the first time on our full moon releasing practice broadcast. And if you are new, welcome. So I use Western Sidereal Astrology in my practice, and this is a choice that I came to several years ago. I find that Western Sidereal Astrology provides a unique avenue of insight, especially into helping you reconnect with your soul purpose and remembering why it is you came into this world to begin with. And so my aim with the broadcast is always to help kind of provide guidance for you on how you can consciously use the energies of the transiting planets to affect your life in a positive way. And so with these broadcasts, we're specifically dealing with the new moon and the full moon, which we use to set intentions and to release things that aren't serving us any longer. And so that's what we're going to be doing tonight. So welcome. If you need to look up your sidereal sign placements, you'll want to do so. There's an easy online calculator at mysticphysick.com/sidereal tools where you can just type in your birth data and find out for free. You may want to know not only your rising sign, but also your sun sign. We're working primarily with your rising sign tonight, but you can do the same exercise with your sun sign, and you'll want to know those if you plan to read the sidereal monthly horoscopes at the website at mysticphysick.com. So bear with me just a moment. I'm going to refresh, my browser. I want to be able to catch your comments on my laptop if necessary, in case I lose them on the phone. And that way, for those of you who are joining live, I'll have another avenue to connect with you if something happens with the broadcast, because sometimes I don't see the comment on my phone. It's weird. Sometimes it happens. I think I've got this muted. Yes. Awesome. Okay, so we're good to go. Bear with me tonight. Hopefully we won't have any problems with the signal, but I am sharing the bandwidth with the Hubster, who is doing his own Hangout live broadcast with his fans and followers tonight. So we got a little bit of an overlap just due to our broadcasting schedules. So bear with me. Hopefully we won't have any problem with that though. But thanks for joining me. So what we're going to do tonight, tonight I'm going to guide you through identifying what house you'll be working with based on your sidereal rising sign and or your sidereal sun sign if you want to use the practice for your sun sign as well. I'll be walking you through how to recognize where to let go of what's been holding you back, especially in the house that Aries occupies in your sidereal natal chart. And we'll be walking through some exercises to kind of help you establish a clean slate so that you can open up your life to growth and adventure. It's good to have you with us, Danielle. Thanks for joining me. So tonight we've got the full moon in Aries, and what I'll do for the first part of the broadcast, we'll talk a little bit about this current full moon in Aries, and then we'll dive into what house this full moon is falling in for each of you by rising sign, and what the themes of that house are for you. That way you can take notes if you're not super familiar with astrological houses and what they represent. And then once we've done that, we'll explore more in depth the Aries archetype. The warrior and the newborn are Aries archetypes, and what his themes are, and identify ways that we can release Aries energies. These are usually being expressed in an unhealthy or unconscious pattern that's not serving us, or that may be actively impeding our progress. So we'll identify what those are for each of us individually, and then we'll write out a statement releasing them, and we'll have our releasing practice at the end of the broadcast. So thank you all for joining me. This particular full moon is it's in feisty Aries, right? It's kind of amplified because we have Uranus in close conjunction, and that's going to stir the impulsive, headstrong quality that Aries just naturally has. Is also going to stir those competitive impulses. And we all have Aries somewhere in our natal chart, so we all feel these energies in some way in our lives, and we'll likely feel them most strongly through our Mars placements. Danielle Whitney says, amen. Yes, don't get me on that soapbox, Danielle. I'm not down with the sign bashing. I know that sometimes in astrology, we get caught up in sign bashing, right? Because we all have our least favorite sign or our least favorite qualities of a certain sign, right? Well, we all have every sign somewhere in our chart. So we all express consciously or unconsciously the qualities of every sign in the zodiac. So when you sign bash, when you reject a sign, you're rejecting a part of yourself that you have not yet acknowledged and integrated and dealt with in a healthy way. So don't do that. Instead, explore what's positive, because every sign has a healthy and unhealthy expression. Every sign has a positive and a negative expression, and we can all slip into and out of those behaviors consciously and unconsciously. And the idea is, if you're doing it right, every time you do it, you're doing it consciously. And that's the proper way to employ the principles of astrology right there, is to step into it consciously, know what you're doing, know when and where it's appropriate to embody each of the 12 human archetypes, because that's what astrology is the study of human archetypes. And each of them serve a purpose, right? And there's a time and a place where it's appropriate for any of those astrological archetypes. Aries, if you have Aries rising, this is a first house full moon for you. So it has to do with personality and identity, has to do with self-expression and the physical body and your appearance. It also has to do with your role in the world, okay? And so especially when you have a first house full moon, you may find that a role that you've been playing is coming to an end. And it may be sometimes a role that you've taken on as part of your identity. No such thing as a perfect chart. Amen to you, Danielle Whitney. That's absolutely true. There's no such thing as a perfect chart. If you have Taurus rising, this is a 12th house full moon for you. So privacy and seclusion, spirituality, the unconscious mind, escapist tendencies, and addictions also fall under the 12th house. Hi, Rosalind. It's good to have you with us tonight. I'm just getting to Gemini, so hopefully I haven't covered your rising sign just yet, but Gemini rising is 11th house full moon. So friends, organizations, hopes, and dreams are 11th house themes. For Cancer rising, it's a 10th house full moon, so career and achievement. It's awards and recognition, it's fame, status, and reputation. Those are all 10th house themes. And then for Leo rising, those of you who are watching with Leo rising are going to have a 9th house full moon. So this is international affairs. It's long distance travel, things like immigration. It's long distance communication, so like publishing and broadcasting. And then it's also legal matters, higher education, and religious affairs. Can also include philosophy if that's something that affects you directly as well. For Virgo, this is going to be an 8th house full moon. So this is other people's money, resources that come to you through other folks in your life, earnings from investments, taxes that you owe or taxes that are returned to you. It can be inheritance, it can be bonus or commission income, as well as other windfalls like lotteries or winnings, right? But then the 8th house can also have to do with themes around the occult, around death, sex, rebirth, and transformation. So not just money, but other types of generative and regenerative activities. Okay. You have Libra rising 7th house. So we're talking about marriage and partnership. This can be business partnership. It can be romantic partnership. Any kind of long-term committed relationship is going to fall under the 7th house. Can be your relationships with other people in general and how you behave in them, and then also what you look for or what tends to attract you in that opposite person in the relationship, right? And then also the 7th house has to do with open enemies, okay? And also what we reject about ourselves specifically. You can look to the descendant to describe that. If you have Scorpio rising, it's going to be a 6th house full moon. So work, health, pets, daily routines, your habits and schedules. Also diet and eating fall under 6th house. And then for Sagittarius rising, it's a 5th house full moon. So creativity, children, love and romance, risk-taking activities, pleasurable activities. So sports also fall under 5th house. Capricorn, for Capricorn rising, this is going to be a 4th house full moon for you. So home or property related full moon. Could have to do with parents, and that's one or both parents, but can also have to do with real estate or property matters, home or family, or your later life. And by later life, I would say after you enter retirement, later life, right? We say the 4th house rules the end of the matter and it rules later life. So we're talking what we would consider maybe your sunset years, although that's really kind of relative depending on the generation you're born into, which has a lot of impact on your life expectancy. But we tend to think of it as the later life, the sunset years, whatever those years happen to be, depending on your generation. If you have Aquarius rising, this is going to be a 3rd house full moon. So travel and communication that happen locally to you. Also, childhood education falls under the 3rd house. So do siblings and your extended family, so like aunts and uncles and cousins and neighbors, as well as your immediate environment. For Pisces, finally then, this is a 2nd house full moon. So this is earned income and expenses. It's wealth, it's movable possessions, money that you earn, that sort of thing. Not money that comes to you through other people. Money that comes to you from the work that you do with your own 2 hands, or the work that you do every day. So if you joined late, if you didn't catch your rising sign, what house and themes this full moon is falling into for you, go ahead and let me know in the comments what your sidereal rising sign is, and I'll recap for you. And then we'll go over the Aries archetype and themes that we're going to be looking at more closely this evening as we prepare to do our releasing practice. And I hope you're all as excited about this as I am. I love the releasing practices. I don't know why. I just do. So Aries is the constellation of the ram, right? We're talking about cardinal fire. This is active principle. It's about as active principle as you can get. It's cardinal active and it's fire active. So this is passionate. This is intense. It's hot. So it's full of initiative, but Aries energy sometimes lacks a little bit of follow through. Okay. Is considered the first sign of the zodiac. And as such, we also associate it with the archetype of the newborn. So we consider Aries to be optimistic, to be full of unrealized potential, right? And we also associate Aries with the warrior, with the hired man or mercenary, right? He's the trailblazing pioneer, the person who's willing to go do things that other people aren't willing to go do, right? The brave and courageous warrior and explorer and pioneer. So Aries is kind of this naturally competitive energy, and it's filled with the drive to win. And often Aries experiences personal challenges where no challenge was really intended, right? So I don't want to say this is a tendency necessarily to make mountains out of molehills, but to perceive other people's behaviors or comments or statements as challenge, even if that's not what the other person meant. It's just a natural state of being, and so often that's a common reaction in our Aries house. We can behave that way, or where we have Mars in our chart, we can behave that way. Okay, so keeping in mind the area of life represented by the house that Aries occupies in your sidereal natal chart, I want you to consider the following prompts and questions as we get into our releasing practice. I'm going to get my paper and my pen ready here. So one thing that Aries can struggle to do is learning to pick your battles. Sometimes where we have Aries or Mars in our chart, we get caught up in arguing over small or inconsequential issues that cause unnecessary drama or unnecessary conflict. So one thing to consider now at the full moon in Aries is, can you let go? Do you have a need to argue, or a need to be right, to compete on an issue or a topic of discussion or an opinion? And can you let go of that need to argue, or can you let go of your tendency to see another person's differing perspective or opinion as a personal challenge? Because sometimes we take other people's opinions or perspectives as personal challenges, right? They challenge our entire worldview sometimes, and we take that personally, we overreact. Or are you being headstrong? Are you being inclined to go your own way in a way that is also to your detriment? Are you trying to reinvent the wheel, right? Sometimes it's important to remember that just because you've thought of or found a new or novel way of doing something doesn't mean you've found a better way of doing that thing, right? A new way is not necessarily a better way. It's just different. It's just new. Maybe untried, it may be untested, but just because it's new and different doesn't automatically make it an improvement over the old tried and true way of doing things. And sometimes we lose sight of that. Okay? So ask yourself if you are trying to do that, and if that's part of what's holding you back by trying to be new and different, trying to reinvent the wheel. Or is impulsiveness causing you trouble in the area of life where Aries falls in your natal chart? Are you losing patience in that area of your life? Have you established a pattern of walking away rather than committing yourself to crossing the finish line? Can you let go of that impatience? Can you let go of needing to be in a hurry and rush through and get it done? And can you let go of the behavior of giving up and walking away because you've lost patience? Because remember, you can't win if you don't cross the finish line. Aries likes to be competitive, right? Aries likes to be first, and Aries likes to win. But you can't win if you quit before you cross the finish line. So is there a giving up or walking away behavior that you need to work on letting go of that's tied to your impatience for a result? And then finally, where are you repeatedly giving up and starting over rather than seeing things through to their conclusions? So one thing it's important to remember, especially when we're talking about Aries and Mars, is that you're only really in competition with the people around you who've agreed to the terms of that competition in advance, right? So if the people around you, whether it's other people in your industry or in business near you that you might be competing with, whether it's other coworkers or students that you feel you might be competing with, if there's no one in your vicinity who's agreed to terms of a competition with you already, they're not really in competition with you, right? So you can keep trying to compete with them, and you can continue to engage in this kind of impulsive and headstrong behavior, but it won't necessarily get you anywhere, because there's not any sort of upfront agreement about the terms of the competition and what you're going to win and how it's going to benefit both of you to be in competition with each other, right? So if no one's agreed to any kind of competitive terms, then what you need to do is focus on competing with the old you to become a new and improved version of yourself. If you can't let go of your need to compete with other people, see if you can redirect that need to compete and compete with yourself. But especially take time to recognize if you're dealing with a need to compete or a need to win that isn't really serving your highest interest. Because if it's not serving your highest interest and it's not holding you back, find a different way to deal with that energy, because it's not serving you to keep doing what you're doing. It's basically the idea, I guess, that we're striving at here. So write down the ways in which you've identified Aries behaviors or beliefs which are no longer serving you. Write them down on a piece of paper. And then when you're finished, we're going to go on to the next step of our releasing practice. But let me recap real quick. So those of you who don't need a recap, go ahead and get started, and I'll recap really quickly what the prompts are for our Aries releasing. Okay, so we want to encourage you to pick your battles. That's one. Are you arguing over small or inconsequential issues that are causing unnecessary drama or conflict? Can you let go of a need to argue or a tendency to see other people's differing perspectives or opinions as personal challenges? Are you being headstrong or inclined to go your own way in a way that is also to your detriment? Is impulsiveness causing you trouble? Especially in the area of your chart or in the area of your life where Aries falls in your natal chart. Where are you losing patience, walking away rather than committing to crossing the finish line or seeing things through to their conclusion? And where are you kind of stuck in need to compete with people around you or a need to win against people around you rather than competing with the old you to become a new and improved version of yourself? So let's look at the comments. Danielle says, I'm going to replay this over and over again. That is just fine. That's why I send you a link afterwards, Danielle, so that you can replay them as much as you need to. Rosalind says, laughing out loud, Moon will be in the 9th house conjunct my Mercury. I have lately been believing that I found a new and better way to calculate house systems based on the ecliptic and azimuthal grid overlap. Let me see if I can open this up to see more. Oh, here we go. The grid overlapping every 30 degrees rather than by the diurnal and semi-arcs. So since what I have been doing applies to all areas of the Earth while other house systems can't be calculated anywhere within the Arctic Circle, that is true. Of course, Rosalind says, I can't expect this to work for everyone, but I would like to get it out someday. I try not to be frustrated with the 1% of astrologers I can actually find and relate to, so I'm trying to start up my own website in the future. That is fantastic, Rosalind. I've been pretty argumentative in the past over this, and I try not to be too intense for my friends over the subject because I get so passionate about it. And that I think that passion is a good thing. So hold on to that. Just see if you can channel it productively, right? That's the whole idea. Ultimately, she says, I just want something that works for everyone and doesn't exclude people. Yes, Rosalind, you've touched on a thing right there. So this is one of the reasons why with any chart reading, my preliminary approach is with the sidereal zodiac and a whole house system. Those are the oldest systems that we use. They're fundamental to everything that we know about astrology. And what I like about whole house is the fact that it doesn't break down at other latitudes and other hemispheres the way that some house systems can break down. The other thing that I really like about it is that, especially for folks who are new to astrology, it really simplifies chart interpretation and understanding what's going on. When you're trying to write an interpretation for a planet in a sign, in a house, in aspect to another planet, in another sign, in another house, it helps if you're not dealing with weird house systems that don't quite line up to the signs and you have to try to bend and tweak and do the mental gymnastics to come up with a solid interpretation. When you're new to the material and you're not as practiced and not as familiar with it, having to do those mental gymnastics just makes it that much harder to get a handle on how this all works. And so I always recommend start from the basics, start from the beginning. And if you want to explore from other avenues and add layers and angles of approach and examination on top of that, by all means, go ahead. But start with the basics and start with what works and add the fancy stuff later. But I totally understand how you feel about that, Rosalind. I'm with you right there. I am going to get my paper ready. If anyone needs me to recap any of the prompts for them, let me know. If not, I'm going to go ahead and take a moment here to write out, to think about what I want to let go of, and to write it out for myself. Let me see. Oh my goodness, this is my friendship sector. I do have a tendency to be competitive with my friends. That's true. Danielle says, funny, I learned to pick my battles over the last week or so, laughing out loud, wink, wink. I bet you probably did. We haven't talked in a while, but I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. So I have Aries on my 11th house, and this is kind of funny because I do compete with my friends, although I don't know that they know that I'm competing with them. Now that I think about it. I have some really amazing friends, to be frank. Like, I'm not bragging. Don't take this as bragging, but I just know some really incredible people. People who've achieved a lot, people who are really passionate, people who are really driven. And having these people in my lives has been an inspiration to me to do more with my own life. To take more initiative in my own life, to start things, to do things, to create things, to make a mark, to improve myself as well. And so in a way, I think that's kind of been healthy and kind of been beneficial, at least for me. Like, my friends probably don't know I'm competing with them, but it's helped me become, I think, a better version of me than I would have been if I had not known these wonderful, amazing people. So I don't know, some of you might be familiar with the term light worker. It gets thrown about a lot, especially in New Age circles, right? Being a light worker. Well, in my mind, being a light worker has always meant being a shining example to others about what's possible. And you can look at that from kind of any point of view, from what's possible spiritually, to what's possible in terms of entrepreneurial success. To me, being a light worker is about living your example of what humanity's highest potential can be, to show others that it's possible to reach that potential, and to, you know, inspire them to take the risk, to take the actions, to move towards whatever it is that they envision as being their highest potential. And so to me, that's what it means. And so I guess if you want to say, I've been surrounded through much of my adult life by folks who are light workers in their own way, who have, you know, done what they do and stood as a really amazing inspirational example to me. And so I'm kind of working with that, but I tend to think of that as being a good thing. So I want to focus on, like, I don't know if there's any unhealthiness attached to that behavior or associated with that behavior that might have manifested for me. But if there is, I want to release that. I want to release any lingering desires that I might have to compete with my friends in a way that doesn't provide a healthy benefit to everyone involved. Right? Rather than competing based on what I can see of their public facing lives, which obviously is not the whole picture of someone's life, right? To stop competing with them based on just that sliver of what their life is really like. And to instead focus my energy on competing with myself to be a better version of me than I was yesterday or than I was this morning. That's my intention. That's what I intend to release. I want to say I release this with gratitude. And if there's healthy things and positive things that come out of this tendency to put myself in competition with people that I know or people that I'm friends with, then I hope that I would want those aspects to stick around, to stay in my life, right? But here I am, so releasing any lingering desires to compete in a way that doesn't provide a healthy benefit both to myself and to everyone else involved. And I release this desire, this habit that I have with gratitude. I'm going to release it with gratitude. I'm going to release it with love, because it has brought something to me that's been beneficial. It brought me a lesson of some sort. And so I'm going to release it with my gratitude and with my love. And so you'll do the same thing. You can, like I said, you can burn it up. If you do that, do it in a fire-safe place. Or you can tear it up into tiny bits. Either one will work. If you burn it, just make sure you burn it completely. And then if you garden, you can dump the ashes in your garden or your flower bed or anything of that sort, because it's really good for the soil. But just let it go. So you can do this exercise like in your fireplace, if you have one, or if you have a fire pit outside in your yard or a barbecue. If you're an apartment dweller, you can maybe do it in a kitchen sink. If you have, like, if your countertop's cleared away, you've got water right there, your sinks are emptied out, you could maybe burn it in your kitchen sink. Or, you know, just be safe. Keep a fire extinguisher handy. But there we go. It's all burnt up. It's gone. It's gone, gone, gone. And if anyone who was on tonight's broadcast who did this practice with us, if you'd like to share in the comments what it is you've let go of or are releasing with tonight's full moon, that'd be cool. Danielle, you're cracking me up. You're going to play it on repeat when it's over. So I do have a few announcements to go over. Nothing major. A lot of repeat from what we talked about on the Sidereal Insights Astro Update yesterday. If you haven't read up on the October full horoscopes by sign, be sure to read those. Most of you, I think, who are on have already subscribed to the new YouTube channel, but if you haven't yet subscribed and you're catching this broadcast, be sure to subscribe to the new YouTube channel. So here's the link for the horoscopes if you need them. Here's a link for the new YouTube channel, and I had to set this up so that I could get the proper channel name when the time comes, so I had to move everything over. And what will happen is, once I have all the videos uploaded to the new YouTube channel, I'll merge both the channels, and the old channel is going to disappear. So if you were subscribed to the old channel but not to the new channel, when I do that, your subscription is also going to disappear. So if you want to keep in the loop when I do post new videos to the YouTube channel, you'll definitely want to subscribe. Let's see what we've got here. Comments. Any here? Okay, so just my links. Most of you also know that we've got the new 2019 Ultimate Astrological Planner ready to go. It's been released, and that we added some new and cool features for the coming year's planner. There's an academic planner that's available now. So if you want to buy a planner now, even though we're mid-year, it'll start because the academic planner for 2018-2019 will run from August to August. You don't have to wait for January to use your Ultimate Astrological Planner if you don't want to wait to order one. You can still get it now. We also now have a disc-bound version available, which is really cool because then in the future years you can just refill it with a new insert. I like that. And printable planners are available. So now you can buy printable files that you can download and print yourself at home in the right size for your favorite planner system. So if you use something that's monarch sized, or that's, you know, traveler size, classic size, pocket sized, we should have an Ultimate Astrological Planner insert that will fit your planner, so that you can customize. If you've got something you already love but you want the astrological info, you can get that. So the link for all the new planners is mystickphysick.com/2019. Super simple. And that will take you to the page with all the different planner options. Plus there's some new cover designs that I released this year. There's a mandala collection that I'm particularly fond of. There's even one that I think an enterprising and creative individual could color. If you're into like adult coloring books and you like to color like the mandalas type stuff, there's a cover that would be perfect for coloring your own mandala planner cover if you wanted to do that. And then I think there's some new designs with birds this year that I think are really cool to look at. But check those out. Mercury Retrograde Survival Guide. We do have Mercury Retrograde coming up next month. It'll be on us before we know it. One of the things I talked about during yesterday's Sidereal Insights Astro Update on the Mystick Physick Facebook page, which you might want to catch the replay if you didn't catch that. We talked about Mercury will be entering the shadow of his retrograde on the 27th, the same day that he moves into Sidereal Scorpio. So he will begin his retrograde on I believe the 16th of next month of November. But he's entering the shadow the 27th, and shadow period is the time that you really want to get serious about preparing for Mercury retrograde. And so what I've got for you, and I probably need to go track down the link and keep it someplace where I have it handy. I'm going to give you a link for my blog post about Mercury retrograde. It's a Mercury Retrograde Survival Guide. It takes you through some basic tips, some general guidance on how you can use Mercury retrograde specifically for the house that Mercury is retrograding in your sidereal natal chart. And so you can also at the blog post, there's a link for you to download an excerpt of my guide, the Mercury Retrograde Survival Guide. That's also kind of a primer on it. So this expanded guide is 33 pages long, and it goes into how to best use Mercury retrograde transits. And right now I've got the full guide, the full 33-page guide on sale for $12.99. That's only through the end of the month. So if you don't have that, I would grab it because you'll come back to it 3 to 4 times a year. So you'll want to have a copy handy. But what we'll do is on the Sidereal Insights Astro Update or on these broadcasts when it's timely information, I'll talk to you about Mercury's retrograde and what sign he'll be retrograding in. You can go back to the guide and look at what house that is for you personally and get a complete breakdown for how you can put the Mercury retrograde period to work productively in your life. So it's a handy guide for folks who dread Mercury retrograde. If you find that you always dread it, you feel like that it's just one of those times when what can go wrong will go wrong, and that's just the way that it has to be because it's Mercury retrograde, then you definitely want to get the guide. I'll give you strategies for what to do if you can't avoid taking certain actions during the retrograde. And then I'll also give you house by house strategies for using the retrograde for your advantage. And that way you can refer back to it again and again every time that Mercury goes retrograde, like we said, about 3 to 4 times a year. So what you'll learn in the guide is there's some critical actions that you should avoid during Mercury retrograde. I'll spell out what those are. There's some things you can do to protect yourself in advance from the worst of Mercury's behavior. I go through what those steps are. And then I walk you through how you can turn any Mercury retrograde around and actually put it to work for you rather than feeling like you're fighting it. And so the Mercury Retrograde Survival Guide, the expanded complete guide, will teach you those specific steps that you can take to prepare for the retrograde, how to get deliberate about using it, and using the retrograde energy in alignment with your own personal natal blueprint for maximum manifesting potential. And it'll teach you how to know where to dive deep and consciously explore your life so that retrograde Mercury is actually working with you and not working against you. So basically the idea is you could do a little advanced preparation, take a few basic precautions, align your actions and your intentions with Mercury's plans during the retrograde, and take charge of your experience. So basically to reframe your entire approach to Mercury retrograde and make it something you look forward to, as I do. I actually get excited about Mercury retrograde. So normally I sell this guide for $17.99. Right now it's on sale for $12.99. But like I said, that's for a limited time. It's only until October 31st. So grab your guide. I'll give you a link right here. This is a link for where you can get the guide, the full guide. But what I don't have right here is a link to the blog post. So when we get off the broadcast, I'll get a link to the blog post and I'll put that in the comments. And that way, if you want to read the blog post to get kind of an idea of what's going to be included in the guide is going to expand on all of that. It's going to go even deeper. Okay. But there you have that. Thanks everyone for joining me. If you have any questions or if anyone is catching the replay of this, and you have questions for me, whether about the full moon in Aries, about your releasing practice, or about the upcoming Mercury retrograde transit, any of that, don't hesitate, ask away. I will be around to answer your questions, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching.